Crafting your compelling keynote speech. Last Saturday, I was driving my teenage daughter Tasha to the optometrist. She'd been complaining for 6 months that she was having trouble seeing at distance, and this was the first opportunity that I had to take her. On the drive, she was chatting away as she usually does, and she's usually curious about the world. She's, at the moment, curious about being an adult. How am I going to get a bank account? How am I going to buy a car? And how am I going to learn to drive a car? I said, don't worry, I can teach you. I'm a good driver and I'm a good teacher. And then she said, but how will I know which way to go? And I said, well, it's easy. You just follow the signs. And she looked a little confused, but then we arrived at our destination. We went into the optometrist and she had a very professional examination. And sure enough, Tasha was a bit short-sighted. So she chose her frames, and in about 20 minutes, she got her first pair of glasses. She put them on and was just blown away. Wow, she said, I can see things at a distance. Now, that wasn't the most exciting bit. What do you think was? Well, we got in the car to drive home. And as we're driving home, she exclaims, those signposts, they have street names on them. Now, this was a wonderful father-daughter moment, but I now realized how bad her eyesight must have been if she couldn't see the signposts. But also I got a chance to reflect and think about the fact that sometimes we do need frames to see what is in front of us, and we need a different frame to see what is in the distance. And it helps if we have signposts. Now, in this video, I hope to give you some signposts if you're curious on how you can better frame your keynote speeches. So whether you're a professional speaker or an aspiring professional speaker, or if you're an executive wanting to get out there and give a better speech or presentation, what I'm going to share with you will frame what you're doing. And I'm going to frame you with a model known as the rule of threes. And you know the rule of threes because you know that there are 3 little piggies, there are 3 musketeers, there is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because when we say things in threes, it is much more sticky, it feels more perfect, and as the Latin tells us, omni trium perfectum. Yeah, I did Latin at grammar school. So the rule of threes, whether you are writing poetry, writing a speech, or copywriting, think about saying something in threes. So here are our 3 ways to look at crafting a keynote presentation. Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, otherwise known as the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. And within each of these thirds, you're going to find that you're going to put a story, a message, and a transformation, a change. And what really makes this compelling is when there is a time, a place, and an emotion. And if you get some time left over or you're intentional, you can give a bonus. And I will give you a bonus today for watching this video. So, get to the beginning. Now, if you want the notes on this presentation to save you writing down, you can go to my blog, which is selfleadership.com/blog. Look for the post, How to Be a Great Keynote Speaker. So Act 1, the setup. 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal lawns of these 2 foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Now, I was exposed to Shakespeare at a young age, and the beauty of this opening prologue for Romeo and Juliet clearly articulates the rule of threes. There is time, place, and emotion. Time, it's current. Place, the fair Verona, and the emotion, the ancient grudge. But also the threes in terms of the alliteration. Look at that. Fourth, fatal foes. Beautiful writing. Now, I know Shakespeare, but I think I can help directionalize you to apply this to a speech. Time, place, emotion inside a setup. In 2019, I gave the keynote speech for the Asia Professional Speakers Convention. And I'm going to play you a couple of minutes of the beginning of that speech. And I want you to watch it and listen for the way I have set up the speech and how I've engaged the audience with a compelling time, place, and emotion. Let me take you back to 1999. It's early morning. I can smell the coffee, which is not surprising because I'm standing in a cafe. I don't feel like coffee. I don't feel like breakfast. In fact, I feel sick. I'm thinking to myself, what the hell have I done? A few months earlier, I had seen a professional speaker at a convention. And I thought to myself, I could do that. And then I uttered the immortal words, how hard could it be? Would you say that with me? How hard could it be? Back to the cafe. People are walking in, they're taking their seats, they're drinking their coffee, they're waiting for breakfast. Breakfast and a speech. And the speaker was me. You see, I had realized that nobody books a speaker until they have been seen, and you don't get seen unless you've been booked. And I had a genius idea. I would book myself. I booked out a cafe and I sold tickets to my first ever speech. This is my first piece of speaker marketing. It was a postcard. Do you remember postcards? Yeah, some of us are old enough to remember postcards. And by the way, that is me with hair. This is my first ever speech. And I sold out. Was it a good speech? Probably not. I had overconfidence that at least got me started. But I also had the self-awareness to know that I could get better, at least to not feel like throwing up before I spoke. Did you spot the time, place, and emotion? Now, if you want to watch it again or you want to watch the whole speech, go to my YouTube channel. The shortcut is selfleadership.tv and you can watch it all over again. Now, I want to just step out of structure for a moment and just share with you a little bit on process. How do you go about coming up with the ideas, etc.? Well, a keynote speech is usually themed. The conference usually has a theme or a topic, and if you're giving a speech, you should be in alignment with that topic. Last year I gave a keynote speech for Deloitte Asia, and the theme was legacy, and so I researched everything that I could find on legacy. I thought about my own legacy, and I brainstormed those ideas on flip chart paper, and then I converted them onto PowerPoint or keynote slides, and I moved the ideas around so I got a flow and could apply the rule of threes. So do this. That's called creating a storyboard. This screenshot here is from a book I'm currently writing. I'm actually moving my ideas around for the book. Now, when you give a presentation, obviously the text is going to go, and as you've seen on my presentation today, you'll replace that with pictures. And then you iterate. So you leave it, you go have a sleep, go for a walk, whatever you need to do, and ideas will come, and then you go back and you add, subtract, adjust what you need to do to make it a compelling speech. In fact, just before I gave this presentation, I went back into the PowerPoint, wrote out some of the stories longhand to make sure I had chosen the best language. So that's the process of writing a speech. Now we get to Act 2, the confrontation. And this picture behind me here is the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is a mythologist, and he recognized that there's a story structure that we always have. The hero has a call to action, meets a mentor, and then he goes through a threshold where he is tested. And in this part of the speech, you're either sharing a personal story or your organization's challenge and how it's addressing that challenge. Or you're confronting the audience with a new idea, new belief, new way of looking at the world that is a challenge to them as you share that idea. So this happens in Act 2 once you've created the setup. Now, the way you're going to make this compelling is to illustrate it with stories, and everybody, and I mean everybody, can tell a story. Kids tell great stories. We forget how to tell stories because we grow up and it's educated out of us. Get it back in, get to telling stories, access that childlike aspect of yourself, and tell stories in your speeches. And even if you say, but Andrew, I've got to give data and spreadsheets and numbers, every number is a story. Behind every number, the top line, the bottom line, the delta, there is a story behind that. Your job is to dig deep and find that story. So that will be the pinnacle of what you do. And a way to think about telling a story around numbers are asking these 3 questions for the audience. What's going on? Why should you, as a person listening to me, share these numbers? Why should you care? How are these numbers relevant to you? You know, the X number of million tons of polar ice caps are melting. How is that relevant to you? Well, you're going to have to move into the top story of your house because the bottom will be flooded. What is the critical metric you should pay attention to? How many years have we got before my ground floor is flooded? So that's how you address numbers in a keynote speech. And then, of course, your keynote speech will have a message. We might have a message in the bottle, as I've got just here. My message as a speaker on self-leadership is that you can't lead others unless you first lead yourself. And I have a bonus for you. You can download a PDF of my 2016 best-selling book on self-leadership. This is not the original. The original is in 2012. But this easy-to-understand manual, you can have that, plus some self-leadership coaching from me for just $7 if you go to selfleadership.com/SLA. So, moving on. Act 3, the resolution. So in Act 2, you've created the conflict. In Act 3, you need to resolve that conflict and articulate the transformation, the change. What change has happened? We get paid for creating change. So let me share with you a story about a client of mine. This is Grace. Grace is the chief economist of Botswana. And during the pandemic, Grace was in charge of getting the funds to the right people to keep businesses open and make sure people were looked after. She did such a great job of not just managing funds, but generating new business, that the US Treasury Department invited Grace to present. And she said to me, how can I present? How can I tell this story? And I said, well, I'm going to give you a 5-step structure. Now, this is the exception that proves the rule, but this is an advanced technique. Let's go from 3 to 5. Here are the 5 things that she shared. I am, my mission is, the challenge we faced is, The solutions we found are, and the results are measured by. And you can see that we've compressed a couple of things here. I am Andrew Bryant. My mission is to wake people up to live their best lives and have the most success in their careers. Now, the challenge I face is getting people out of their frame of mind. Solutions I found is using videos and speeches and coaching like this, and the results are measured by when people get the promotion they want or wake up to live their best lives and positively impact others. Grace's story was Grace's story. What's your story? Because this is a video about you crafting your keynote. Now, part of the resolution or the transformation will be a call to action. This might be where you sell your product or service. I gave you a link earlier to selfleadership.com/SLA. That could be a call to action. But typically the call to action here is, what are you going to think differently? What are you going to feel differently? And what are you going to do differently as a result of hearing me today? And that's the call to action. What are you going to think differently? What are you going to feel differently? And what are you going to do differently as a result of listening to me today? And that is your big call of action. And when you do that call of action to action and it resolves the pain, that's when you get the standing ovation. That's when you get the thank you from your audience. So I'm going to go back to the speech that I shared earlier and show you the end. And you will see the standing ovation, but you will hear me give the audience of speakers and want to be speakers a call to action. So let me just share that with you. To speak the future. I mean, honestly, how hard could it be?
All right, thank you, Andrew. Very inspiring way to start off day 2.
And, you can see that there was another call to action there, letting you know what my website is for connecting with me again. So thank you for listening to this presentation on how to write a compelling keynote. I hope you got some lessons. I hope you got at least 3 things from this presentation. Anybody can write a speech as long as they've had some experience. They've had something happen in their lives. They've had a moment, their life was a mess, and now they've got a model or a message that they want to share with the audience. So if you've got a message, you can be a speaker. Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Bryant.